Hey guys! Today's video is going to be a tutorial that focuses on how I weather Clone Trooper armor. Some people out there might have very different ways on doing this, but I'd like to share with y'all my way. I'm not saying my method is the best, but at least it gives you a reference point in comparison to other processes. In doing this, I will use my Commander Deviss custom to demonstrate. I personally do not know much about this character, except for the fact that he is from the comics and was supposed to be in Revenge of the Sith, but was quote-unquote later replaced by Commander Bly. Now, I don't know what it means when they say he was replaced by Commander Bly, since their history and personalities were not really explored in the film, so perhaps what they meant was his color scheme was altered into Commander Bly's earth tone color scheme because they pretty much have the same pattern, right? And that's pretty much what I've done with this custom. It's basically a repaint of Bly. However, I took this opportunity to also do a full repaint and weather this figure. I document my process because I think this design is ideal for demonstrating my weathering techniques. So before we start, there's one thing I forgot to mention while filming my process, and I want to cover this now. This figure is casted in white plastic, and I used to apply weathering directly on top of the raw plastic. But lately, I've started to lay down a coat of white primer over this plastic. There are two reasons I bothered with this time-consuming process. First off, I do not like the yellowish shade of white that comes with Commander Bly figure. But what's more, I also discovered in my previous work that when I apply weathering directly onto the raw white plastic, it dulls the figure into this strange grayish tone. The Commander Keller custom I've showcased in previous video perfectly illustrate this issue. As you can see, the head is done over a primed surface, whereas the torso was directly onto the plastic. Not only are the whites not matched, but you can see as soon as I put on the weathering, it starts to take on this weird grayish tone that I've mentioned before on the torso. Whereas on the head, whereas the primed surface, it appears a little bit more, let's just say, sharper and stronger. Other than that, I'm not going to dwell too much into this custom. So without further delay, the following segment is more in-depth video on weathering. If it's too long for you, feel free to use the timestamps to skip to the parts that's relevant to your queries. Hey guys, so I'm going to start this video from this stage. As you could all see, basically I'm almost in the middle of my process because I want to focus this video mostly on weathering this thing as opposed to all the other stuff that comes before it. Just really quickly go through what I've done so far. So this is Commander Bly body, and what I've done is I really don't like the whites on the Commander Bly because basically it's got this yellow tinge to it, and I can understand it's trying to harmonize with the rest of the outfit, but in this particular part, I just don't like how yellowish it gets, and then mixed with the red, I just think it's much better if I just spray paint this with a white primer, and then afterwards, of course, I masking tape everything. And then I made it into, I made this red stripe over here. And then afterwards, I top coat it with gloss. All right, glossy top coat. And just to kind of seal it up. And the reason why I do this, the top coat, is so that since top coat is lacquer, I could then, whatever I do on top of it, I could pretty much erase it with the X20 thinner. And I said many times, get the X20 thinner, not the X20A thinner. The X20A thinner is for acrylic. This is for enamel, right? So this is actually stronger. But because it's for enamel, it is not strong enough to eat through lacquer. So that's why anything that I put on top of here, as long as it's enamel, I will be able to make it, quote unquote erase it in case if something goes wrong. And then I could, at least have some saving grace over it. All right. So one last word before I begin the whole thing. Ooh, this whole thing this thing's about to break. Oh wow, this joint broke. Anyways, I'll have to probably glue it back a bit. Okay, that's disturbing. So why is this paint scheme good for demonstrating this? Is because this is a painted white trooper body, but then the red will enable me to show you guys how I managed to kind of chip any type of secondary color off, or at least give the illusion of it, so that that's the first step. The first step is to be able to take this red part and then start to do it so that it looks like it's fading or it's eating away, right? Or there's scratches, stuff like that. Then I'm going to top coat it again, just to protect it, to seal it. And then I'm going to put the base layer of grime and soot on it. That's the base weathering layer. And then after that, then I'm going to seal it again. And then I will then use a sponge to put on other markings, seal that, and then finally I'll put in some of the accents that shows the chipping on the white armor. So all of this is going to come back and pretty much make this piece look weathered. All right, so I'm going to get it started, and I'll see you guys soon. So this first step I want to do is to be able to weather it such that, for example, right here you can see I've already begun to make it look like the paint is being chipped away. I've messed up a little bit, like this doesn't really make sense over here. This over here, again, doesn't make sense. But hopefully, because this is actually going to be covered up by the pauldron, or at least it's not going to be as noticeable. So I think it's okay. All right. But what I do here is this. Some people actually, a lot of the professional modelers actually would put what they call masking liquid before spraying on the red. They're dabbing these masking liquids on the edge or wherever they want this thing to be. And then after they spray it on, they just kind of somehow be able to wipe it off. I've never used it because, well, this weathering is not as involved as what they do. What they do is amazing. Usually I just do some regular chips, and it's a lot easier for me just to kind of paint it in with white, right? And so, but the disadvantage of that is, as you could see, because I've masking taped this and I sprayed this on, there's a certain thickness over here. There's actually, if you look at it microscopically, it actually will have a slight step in here. So sometimes you'll be able to still discern this edge over here. So it's actually, if you put it under a microscope, it's actually not as nice as, say, if you use masking liquid. But for me, for the naked eye, it should be fine. So here we go. So what I do is this. First, I have to do the fade, right? The fade is pretty much, this is the white I use. It's the only thing that I could get my hands on, and it works for me, so it's fine. You get this type of stuff, right? And basically, this paint is a bit old, so of course, kind of mix it in here. Okay, should be good enough. And then basically, just take this and scoop it in here, just like so. The advantage of doing this is that you won't be spilling the paint like this, which will sometimes cause rundowns over here when you kind of seal it. When you kind of twist the bottle closed, it will be a bit messy, let's just say. All right. Now, I used to take a hand painting version of the primer and do it here. use that instead. And basically what's good about that is it's the same shade of white as this. But then what happened is primer is actually very special type of liquid that when you first sponge it on there, it actually looks fine. But then after the second application, it starts to get really wonky. So, and it gets dry and lumpy and stuff and hard to work with. So I am using paints now, even though there's going to be slight variation, but it should be okay. So what I do is this. This is something that you could, for all you ladies out there, this is just kind of, you guys all know this is the very fine grained sponges they use for makeup. And yeah, I went to my local makeup store and just got it. And so basically here you go. So I put it onto one of these things, dab it in like this, right? Put it in paper towel and just kind of dry it up as much as you can. And don't be worried about drying it too much, because it's better to kind of, it's better to do a little bit under rather than doing over. And I'm gonna do my best to kind of do this on camera right here a bit. So basically you just kind of do along the edges. It's kind of difficult. See what it is already you're starting to get some fade marks over here. All right, so I'll do my best. Do it in here. And then along the edges, sometimes you get a little bit more, right? So you get this like that, right? And then right, that along the edges. This should be fine right now, like this. You could try to fade the edges a little bit more out here. I'm gonna do it on this side over here where it's covered by a pauldron. So if in case I messed up, see, but basically this is how it goes, like that. You decide to put a little bit more in there, do it again. Okay, and then boom, 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 boom. See how it's starting to eat into the edge over here. But in this case, I won't go overboard, right? So this is what you have over here. Now, my next step is to then be able to take this. I'm gonna put some retarder on here because in this application, actually, I think it's better to just put some retarder. The paint retarder basically slows down the drying of the paint, enables it to go on a little bit smoother. Put like 3 drops just to kind of make it super liquid, right? Take this, mix it a little bit. It should be enough for this application right here, right? Okay, I'm gonna see if I could do this on camera again. I have a small brush over here, put some on here, and then, okay, I'm gonna test it on here. Oh man, doesn't look like it's sharp enough, okay? Hold on. There we go. So, I'm doing this all on camera, by the way. I'm not even using my microscope, so you just kind of go slowly, just kind of have it eat the edges over here. All right, it's starting to run out of paint, so I'll do it more. See? There you go. That. You want to make sure, after you finish, you want to make sure that they're not all the same size. Right now, what I'm doing right now is all kind of the same size, so it kind of looks kind of artificial, right? You see how it cakes up like that? Sometimes I like to just kind of press it down a little bit, right? See, and you got my fingerprints on there too. There you go. Like that. Sometimes I will, especially on the edge over here where you want to have the line over here, I will load it up. And right here, let's just do this, for example. Like that. Right, this is where most likely the corner things would happen. So is parts like here, like right here. I'm doing this on camera, I can't, great. Am I even touching this thing? Okay. Okay, let's just say it eats up a lot of paints over here, right? Boom, boom, boom. Right here, kind of just kind of dry brush it a little bit like that, right? And then you start to have to vary up the size of this. So for example, over here, like you start to have it eat in it a little bit more, right? This is going to be covered by the pauldron. So I'm going to start off with these parts first. So this, the size over here, I'm going to have certain parts kind of even a little bit more in here. Since it's a scratch, it might come in here. I have to kind of, let me do off camera over here. Boom. See, like that. Not the best. I could actually vary it in scale even more. I'm going to start making smaller ones. Let's see if I could do. So kind of start to try to do my best to erase that kind of line over here. And then start to so much better. Not doing this on camera, but let's see. I'm doing so over here. Start to eat up over here. You try to vary the scale so that it will start to look natural. So some of them are really small, minuscule. Some of them are really large. So over here. I might be overdoing it over here, but see, now you're starting to have some chips in there. And I'll probably take it off camera just to kind of play with it a little bit. Now, let's just say, hey, I did something, I'm not very happy with it. So what do? I'll take the X20, thinner, and I'll take a cotton swab, put it in here, just kind of, and then, let's just say I don't like the way this looks right here, this over here. I want to kind of like mute a little bit. Kind of go in there and you could start to erase it, as you can see over here, right? But I kind of like that part. There goes a little danger over here. So I'm starting to drag the paint into the white instead, which is not good either. So I'll have to kind of finagle it. Sort of now you see that I'm actually caking this up. There's a danger in that, because while it might actually not look bad to the naked eye, you would start to see that later on when I because there's some thickness onto this, later on when I actually put some wash over it, it might actually accentuate, like say this blob over here, right? You see over here. So I have to be very careful about that stuff. Kind of smooth and even it out a little bit. There you go. So I'm going to take it off site just to kind of play with it a little bit more. But as you can see, this is starting to look like something that's a bit faded, right? You guys get the idea. So okay, so I'm going to afterwards put a top coat over this, and then to protect it once I'm happy with it, and then once that's cured, then I'm going to do the next step. Okay, so now that I put the overcoat, top coat on, right? This is what I ended up with. And then my next move is actually to put the base grime on there. What you're gonna need is, what I usually do is the dark brown panel liner, panel line accent color. This thing is just so messed up. I could not even read the label anymore. I've used it for so long. This is the Mr. Weathering Color Solvent 110. And you take this and then you pour it into, it's better just to kind of do it the right way. Pour this into a tray like so, right? Not too much. This thing is very, very, very flammable, by the way. I mean, I've heard that this is essentially lighter fluid, so do not smoke around here. I'm a smoker, so yeah. Then you'll need a soft brush, kind of just to start dragging the dirt around. And what I have here actually is a different type of brush, which is kind of a hard brush. This is just kind of just see if I could form different textures with this. And then on the other end, I actually have a broken brush. This is essentially this brush after it just completely got like whacked. But I kept it around because it's actually very, very useful for some, right? So this is what I do. And just in case, if you don't really like things, you could actually have the X20 enamel thinner in here to kind of clean it up. So, okay, I've pretty much done one part, but do this, make sure it's closed, because so many times I kept it open and I shook it, and then it pretty much just kind of, yeah, it's messy, okay? All right, so what do you do here, right? You take this panel liner. You don't just rub it all the way around. All you do is just kind of, just do it around the edge. Just kind of do it around the edge. You don't have to be too whatever with it, right? And what you do is, once you have it in a places that dirt might accumulate, then you have to, then what you do is, you take the solvent. And for the longest time, I don't know what the solvent is for, but later on I realized that once you take the solvent, right, look at this, put it in there. What it does is it breaks down my panel liner paint. Kind of breaks it down and it forms this type of texture. And as you start to drag it around, you see how even if you break it down, there's still that edge in it. This is where that, you start taking the back end of the brush and you start rubbing into it like that, just to kind of break it down even more, right? And then what you end up with, sometimes you end up with even this type of dots over here, right? This is not done yet. This is just kind of the beginning, but I'm just showing you what the possibilities are. And once you do this, it starts to break down, right? And the end piece is not going to look this dirty pretty much, but you see this? You start getting this type of thing. Whereas I've never used shoe shine polish, but the results I've seen a lot of times, what it ended up looking like is just looks like it's smeared and it kind of destroys the scale. This kind of looked like got caked up mud, and you kind of, sometimes you kind of want to leave it kind of caked up like that. It's fine. Some parts are darker and stuff, but okay. So pretty much you start seeing here, for example, you see here, right? Even though this is gonna be covered up by the pauldron, but I love the way this kind of turned out, right? And let me see, okay? And what happened is this, I'm starting to feel this part is coming out a bit too dirty. So what I do is I take this end and start rubbing it in. It breaks it down even more. And in some cases, it wipes it away. But as you wipe it away, you could actually then use your judgment and you kind of just see which parts you want to keep this way, right? Ooh, see, that's the good part that I like before I accidentally wipe it away. So over here, I'm going to kind of I'm going to be a little bit more judicious over here. Let me see, I'm trying to, see, I'm doing everything on camera, so it's kind of hard for me to make the judgment. But see, you have some of this stuff still left in this brush, and you start caking it on, and you get these like little dot-like things. And you could start using this to then kind of push the dirt around. Just experiment with it, just play around with it, and this is what I like to use for the base grime. So I hope you like this, the way I do it here. And yeah, I'm going to take this off camera now because I just wanted to make sure that this is nice balance and stuff. All right, I'll see you later. This is what I have so far, right? And I'm actually quite happy with this. It looks a bit, the way the light shine on makes it look a lot more dirty than it is, but it's actually not. Let's just say there's certain parts that you're not happy with. Then I dip it in the X20 thinner, and again, because I've put a finish over this, a top coat over this with lacquer. Let's just say over here, you could then come in here, and it pretty much you could just wipe it away like that. Of course, did I just ruin that piece? No. You know why? Because this part is actually going to be covered by the pauldron. Well, I hope it is. Okay, so what happens is, like, you could go and you could erase mistakes with this. That's why you always have a top coat over that coat. Let me see over here. Let's just say over here. I'm not very happy with this. Boom, boom. You kind of just rub it away like that. Ooh, I really ruined this piece. But, okay. And what you end up is effects like these over here, especially over here. Again, you know, this is so that if you use the other methods, you could actually end up smearing it, and that's not the effect that you want. So you want your weathering to kind of look like this. I think this thing I could clean it up a little bit more right here. Actually, I think I made it even more messier, but see? And once you do that, then you spray a top coat over it again to lock it down once you like it, because this stuff will move around afterwards. Another thing I kind of want to cover is, you notice that once I put the panel liner down, I immediately dip in the solvent, because otherwise, if you let it dry for too long, it actually doesn't behave the way it does. Third thing I really want to cover is this. I have a piece over here, and this is the belt piece. It didn't turn out as nice, and this is why, because I didn't put a top coat over this. And as a result, it just gets soaked into the paint, and even though I put on the solvent, it doesn't move around that easily, and it just gets embedded into the paint color itself. I'm cool with this. No, I'll probably just put on some highlights in here and it'll call it a day. But just to let you know, that is why I put on a top coat. And I've always put on glossy top coats, if you guys haven't noticed already. I always like my Clone Trooper armor glossy. So again, because it's glossy, it tends to just glide around easier. That's just kind of the feeling I get. You could try matte, I don't know, but that is just what I have over here. So yeah, this is what I have, and I will see you in the next stage. So the next stage, after I put on this top coat, then I am going to go in there, maybe do some light sponging around here just to kind of add even more. Although you could easily argue that with marks like these, you actually don't really need to sponge around, but I'll just do it just to kind of demonstrate it to you in case if you like it. All right, so I'll see you soon. Okay, so I'm here doing the optional part, and again, I stress that this is optional because this is the part where I take the sponge and kind of lay down some like small parts that like some specks on there to give the illusion that the paint is kind of wearing down with weather. And I already think that the steps before already have done that, because it just kind of seeped into the pore. Some of the paint seeped into the pore of the plastic, and kind of achieved that bit. In case if someone of you wants to go this extra step, do this. So what I have is I have the black paint, right, Citadel. And again, do it here until you hardly have any paint left, right? And then you go in here and just carefully lay it down like that. See that? Along the edges here. Now, be very judicious about this. the thing I want to mention about judgment is you do not want to have this thing. I know it's, oh, look at that. There you go. Haha. There you go. I'll wipe that away later on. But you do not want to make this thing look like it's dragged through mud. Yeah, actually you do, but not as a toy that drags through mud. You do a little bit too much over here. You overkill a little bit too much. And what you ended up with is that it would just look like a toy that you pretty much dragged out of your grandmother's basement. So you get something like this, leave it alone, okay? What I usually do is, ooh, what is it doing? What's my camera doing over here? It's doing this kind of, ooh, it's doing kind of a vanity thing with this. And what I usually do is whatever oh, you see that? This is what I don't want. This I could kind of accept, but I have to kind of wipe that away later on. Like right here, right? You kind of want to do the edge. I still think that I overcooked a little bit on the other parts, but see right here, it's very subtle. My judgment in terms of what I deem is overcooking it or not has to do with basically if I were to think that, oh, this is just fine, this looks just great, usually you want to dial down even more, because this is very tempting. When you figure out a technique that looks pretty well, you realize, oh crap, you know, I want to use it more, this is so fun. And you tend to start doing something like this. You could leave some of this alone, but I'm going to go in there and I'm going to kind of erase it later on, and I'll show you how to do it. So here, see, just demonstrate on camera, right? Some of the spots that you want, that something like this would make sense, ooh, is, for example, right here, right on these type of armors. Sometimes you go along the edges over here. You kind of be able to have it make sense along the edges over here, and a little bit on the broad side over here. So you bend it down here. See, I'm starting to run out of paint, but see, like that, right? And so now, okay, I have made some mistake. What I do, well, for those of you who have been paying attention to my video, is if you run into trouble like that, again, X20 enamel thinner, you should have already have sprayed top coat on top of this, which is lacquer. So with this, you just go like that, it goes away. And since this is acrylic, you could even pick and choose which one you kind of want to keep. For example, I want to kind of think this is a little bit too even. Sometimes they have the same patterns and I don't want that. You can kind of just erase it, just to kind of see right here. I think I went a bit overboard over here, so I'm just going to neaten up over here. Take that away. See that? Like that, right? Same goes for here, right here. I want to kind of clean this up, because sometimes you think something looks great, but then you bring it to a friend, you show it to him, he's like, dude, man, it looks overcooked. So yeah, so this is what you could actually do. Oh. Where did I put that? See, here, I could then go in and I could just kind of but you get the idea, right? So yeah, I'm gonna finish this off camera and I'll come back to you soon. All right, okay, now that's done. The last part that I want to address is actually adding these chip highlights in there, right? So you see a lot of times with these guys that do the customs is that you would then go through the edge like this, and usually I use the gray Gundam marker. This is number. This is what I use, and this is what I use. And basically, just want to be able to kind of line it up over here, and just do a little bit in areas that will most likely receive dings and scratches, right? So skip it a little bit like that, and basically you start to dot it around. And what this is very helpful with doing is that, first of all, it will, the color is actually slightly darker than the other smudges, so it actually brings a different levels of color into it. Second of all, what it actually does is it will start to highlight the edges, and to the naked eye it will start to make this thing look sharp again. So this part is actually very easy. You know, I've done it many times like that. And again, like this stuff, if you messed up, you could then use the thinner. As long as you have a top coat, you could then play around with it. You could make this thing actually a little bit more like pronounced like that. If you overcooked it, then you could actually take the thinner and you can actually wipe it off. So in areas like this, for example, see this line over here, this kind of continuous line going down like this. And you guys get the idea, right? So I'm going to take this off camera, and I'm going to show you what I ended up with. All right. Okay, so you can see I might clean it up even more, but basically try to not overdo it, because if you do and you draw every single line everywhere, it doesn't look realistic, and on top of that, you destroy the scale. And sometimes you might even go a little bit darker and make big chips out of it. That's fine, but keep that to a minimal, because usually in areas like this, you don't really it destroys the scale. It just does. Like, you know, if you look far away, if the chips are too big, then it start looking like this is a toy and you're just chipping off paint from a toy, as opposed to if you keep it small and minute, but just vary the scale a little bit, then what would happen is you would then be able to convey a more realistic, smaller scale. And I hope that's helpful. So there you have it. I hope this video is informative and helps you on this process. Please ask me any questions in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer you. Also, let me know how you like this format. I'm planning to do more videos addressing very specific parts of the process, which allows me to get a lot more in depth than if I were to do the entire process in one 40-minute video, and most of you would probably not even look at the entire video. But I wanted to just highlight certain parts so that step by step you guys might have some points of discussion with me. So until next time, have a great day and happy customizing.